Ambassador Yarrick Thorne stood on the crumbling balcony of the United Earth Federation's central tower, eyes fixed on the shattered skyline of what had once been humanity's capital. Fires raged on the horizon, and the once familiar hum of human life had been replaced by the mechanical thrum of relief drones scavenging for survivors. Thorne's face was stony, though his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the balcony. The Draken hadn't simply attacked. They'd made a point. Their precision strikes had obliterated Earth's defenses within hours, demonstrating a power far beyond what any human leader had thought possible. Thorne was a diplomat, but even he knew this attack wasn't simply about territorial disputes or resource skirmishes. It was a declaration. Sir, a low voice cut through his grim thoughts. Captain Elias Grayson, a seasoned military strategist and one of the few survivors of the initial assault, stepped forward, his face set with a hardened resolve. Grayson, like Thorne, bore the bruises and scars of the invasion. His left arm hung in a hastily assembled sling, and a jagged cut ran across his temple. Captain, Thorne replied, nodding, his voice level but tight. What's the situation? Grim, Grayson replied. We've lost nearly every primary defensive station. Communications are down across most major cities, and we estimate civilian casualties in the millions. He paused, his voice catching. Sir, they wanted us to feel this. The Draken could have wiped us out in minutes, but they chose this. They chose fear. Thorne nodded, his expression darkening. Fear, yes. But fear could be weaponized, molded into something powerful. He clenched his fists, feeling the anger simmer beneath his calm exterior. As a diplomat, he'd spent his life bridging divides, seeking peace where others sought conflict. But now, peace was a distant memory. A sharp, crackling noise broke their conversation, and the image of General Desmond Vale, Earth's military commander, flickered to life on a holographic screen nearby. His eyes were fierce, the lines of his face etched deeper from days without sleep. Ambassador Thorne. Vale's voice was a steady bark. We're gathering every available leader for an emergency council meeting. You'll want to be there. Understood, General. Thorne met Grayson's gaze and saw the same flicker of determination he felt himself. They both knew what this meeting would mean. Humanity had been shaken, but they were far from defeated. The council chamber was a makeshift assembly, held in the depths of a military bunker beneath the Federation Tower. Leaders from every remaining colony and station beamed in via fractured transmissions, their faces pale but heroic. Despite the damage, this was the one place the Draken had not reached. Thorne scanned the room, locking eyes with each leader as they gave their reports. Losses in the billions, cities razed, the heart of Earth itself crippled. He could see the fear, but he also saw something else. The simmering fire of survival. This attack had bound humanity together in a way diplomacy never could. Now they were more than a coalition. They were a force. General Vale stood and gave a single, curt nod. Thank you all for gathering. You all know why we're here. The Draken have declared war, and it's clear they intend nothing short of our annihilation. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But we have a choice. We can fight back, or we can surrender and be erased. A murmur rippled to the council members, some wary, others brimming with fury. Thorne felt his pulse quicken. His whole life had been dedicated to avoiding conflict, but now he understood that humanity's very survival demanded a response. General Vale gestured for him to speak, and Thorne rose, every eye in the room upon him. We've spent centuries building alliances, seeking peace with our neighbors among the stars. He began, his voice steady and clear. But the Draken have made their intentions unmistakable. They don't seek peace. They seek dominance. He paused, the room silent, as he let his words sink in. This attack is not just an assault on Earth. It's an assault on the very idea that humanity has a right to exist. And if that is how the Draken choose to see us, then we must show them who we truly are. He took a breath, gathering his thoughts and his resolve. Our survival depends on more than simply defending what remains of Earth. We must go beyond our borders, drive them back from every corner of the galaxy. We will show them that humanity is not a species that will cower and die. We will dominate, and we will endure. The room erupted with approval, a wave of fierce determination washing over every leader. Thorn felt their fear melt into unity. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring that no threat could ever come to them again. Later, as the council members dispersed, Thorn made his way to a private communication room, his mind ablaze with strategy and intent. He activated the transmission lines, opening a signal that would reach every corner of known human space. It was time to set the tone for what was to come. He leaned toward the camera, his gaze hard. Every human colony, every fleet captain, every citizen left among the stars would hear these words. People of Earth, of every colony and outpost, of every ship and station. Today, we mourn the loss of our home and our loved ones. But tomorrow, we rise. We will show the Draken, and every species that dares to threaten us, that we are not prey to be hunted. We are a force, a relentless will. You attacked our home. His voice grew darker, carrying an edge that promised violence. Now, we will dominate this galaxy, and we will end any species that dares to stand in our way. The transmission cut, but the message was clear. The Draken had sparked a fire in humanity, one that would blaze across the stars. Ambassador Yarrick Thorn sat at the command center, his face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays, each one showing a different face, a different colony, a different leader. Some faces were haggard and wary, others steely and heroic. Though physically scattered across distant stars, every human outpost felt the same rage that burned within him. The Draken had struck a blow that had shattered any illusion of peace, and now it was up to him to unite what was left. He began, voice steady, eyes intense. You've all seen what the Draken did to Earth, to our families, our friends, our cities. They think they've broken us. He paused, scanning the faces before him. But I am here to remind each of you that humanity does not break. We endure, we adapt, and we retaliate. And we need every one of you, every ship, every soldier, to make sure the Draken and any who align with them understand the cost of attacking humanity. Silence stretched across the communication channels, a tense stillness before the storm. Thorn could see doubts in some of their faces. Small colonies on the fringes, unprotected outposts, mining stations, all knew the risks. Joining this war meant becoming targets. But then one voice cut through, deep and heroic. We'll stand with you, Ambassador. The speaker was Commander Aiden Razan from the Perseus colony, a weathered military man with decades of service, and a fleet known for its resilience in hostile territories. Razan's reputation alone carried weight, and Thorn knew his alliance would sway others. A few more leaders voiced their support, with nods and murmurs echoing from the screens. Thorn sensed a shift. The fear was still there, but now it was interwoven with determination. He knew they weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for the survival of every human settlement scattered among the stars. We're not just allies now, Thorn said, locking eyes with each leader. We are one force. And with that unity, we will be stronger than the Draken ever anticipated. Together, we will make their assault on humanity their last mistake. The final few leaders hesitated, but Thorn pressed forward. If we don't unite now, we won't just lose Earth. We'll lose everything. We have one chance to show the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with. One by one, the remaining colonies offered their ships, their resources, and their soldiers. When the call ended, Thorn felt a weight lift. The message had been clear. Humanity would stand as one, and this coalition would be the spark that ignited the war for survival and dominance. With alliances secured, Thorn turned to Captain Grayson, who was waiting for him in the hangar below the command center. Rows of engineers and scientists bustled around, installing weaponry and enhancing ship defenses, transforming cargo freighters into attack vessels, and retrofitting outdated cruisers with state-of-the-art armaments. "Reports are coming in from the engineering teams, sir," Grayson said, gesturing to the rows of ships in various stages of modification. "They've managed to integrate alien technology from our limited Draken wreckage. Shielding enhancements, propulsion systems, nothing's been overlooked." Thorn watched as mechanics work with fierce intensity, almost reverently handling the alien tech that would soon be humanity's lifeline. "We'll need every advantage we can get," he replied, his voice carrying both gratitude and gravity. "The Draken won't be expecting this level of retaliation. They see us as fractured and weak. It's time to show them our true strength." They moved to the next bay, where teams were assembling weapons that Thorn had never seen before: electromagnetic pulse cannons, plasma projectiles, and ion destabilizers, tools of a war humanity had never prepared for but would now wield with deadly intent. "Status on fleet readiness?" Thorn asked, turning to Grayson. Grayson's eyes gleamed with a mix of pride and fierce determination. "We're almost there. Every ship that can fly is armed, armored, and combat-ready. And with Commander Razan's battle fleets joining us, our numbers are stronger than we dared to hope. We'll hit them hard." Thorn nodded, his mind racing through the strategy they'd devised. Every colony, every station had a specific target. Each faction had a role to play, a piece in a plan meticulously crafted to exploit the Draken's arrogance. They would strike in coordinated waves, aiming at key Draken outposts and resource hubs, destabilizing their infrastructure and forcing their hand. At the center of the command floor, Thorn gathered his top officers for a final briefing. The room was thick with tension, but Thorn saw the confidence in their eyes, a newfound sense of purpose that went beyond survival. These men and women weren't just soldiers. They were the embodiment of humanity's will to fight. "We've waited long enough," Thorn said, his voice carrying the weight of their shared fury and hope. "The Draken believe we're scattered, afraid, isolated. We'll show them that our unity is our greatest weapon. We'll strike fast, and we'll strike hard. Every hit, every victory will echo across the galaxy." He turned to Captain Grayson, who stood with his shoulders squared, ready for whatever lay ahead. "Captain, assemble the crews. The fleets will launch at dawn." Grayson nodded. "Understood, sir. They're ready for this. Every one of them." Thorn stepped back, looking over his gathered officers, his heart pounding with the intensity of the moment. "This isn't just a counteroffensive," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "This is humanity's declaration. We will not just survive, we will thrive, and we will ensure that no threat, no enemy, ever dares cross our path again." As his words settled, the officers nodded, each face heroic. There was no turning back. Humanity was committed, and every soul in that room understood the cost of failure. They would either claim their place in the galaxy or be wiped from existence. But none doubted their path. The room emptied as officers prepared for launch, leaving Thorn and Grayson alone in the silence. "You think they're ready?" Thorn asked, his voice low. Grayson's lips curled in a small, hard smile. "They're ready. And so am I." Thorn's gaze hardened. This was no longer about Earth alone. It was about humanity's place among the stars. The Draken had unleashed a force they couldn't possibly comprehend. And Thorn knew this was only the beginning. With a final glance at the mobilizing ships, he walked out, the weight of humanity's future settling squarely on his shoulders. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, engines flaring as ships steadied into position above the rocky, dark planet of Carthus, a critical Draken outpost. Below lay the silent but fortified sprawl of the Draken's supply and communications hub, a target Thorn and his strategists had meticulously selected. This outpost was the heart of the Draken's trade routes and communication networks. A blow here would send shockwaves across their empire. Ambassador Thorn watched the view screen from his command station on the flagship Heroic, the vanguard of humanity's newly unified fleet. Captain Grayson, standing at his side, adjusted the targeting scope with a steely calm that betrayed nothing of the urgency beneath. The fleet was silent, every ship poised and waiting for Thorn's command. "Every move matters here," Thorn murmured to Grayson, If we show our full strength too soon, we'll alert the Draken to our true capabilities. But if we hold back, we risk letting them retaliate. Grayson nodded, his focus never wavering from the tactical readouts on the console. We'll strike precisely and decisively, sir. They'll never see us coming. Thorn raised his voice, addressing the fleet through the comm. All units. This is Ambassador Thorn. Today, we strike back. Every one of you is here because you chose to stand. Remember, our strength lies not only in our ships and weapons, but in our unity, in our resolve. Let's make this count. Initiate Phase 1. At his command, the first wave of human ships peeled off from the main formation and dove toward the planet's surface, streaking through the thin atmosphere with silent precision. On board the smaller fighters and assault ships, squadrons of human pilots gripped their controls, eyes sharp as they descended toward the outpost below. In the blink of an eye, the Draken's automated defenses detected them, and the sky erupted with a flash of anti-air fire. Defensive turrets on the surface locked onto the descending ships, launching volleys of plasma blasts that left glowing trails in their wake. But humanity's pilots had trained for this. Using evasive maneuvers and synchronized attacks, they twisted through the barrage, closing the distance to their targets with lethal efficiency. Captain Grayson watched the display with a hard, satisfied look. Our ships are holding formation. They're handling this beautifully. Thorn nodded, seeing the Draken's lines weaken. They weren't expecting us to come at them head-on, and certainly not with this kind of coordination. We need to hit the command center, cut their communications, isolate them. Grayson keyed in new orders, and a squadron of heavily armed bombers broke formation, diving toward the outpost command center. As they neared, the Draken scrambled to deploy interceptors, sleek, vicious ships that whipped toward the human bombers with deadly speed. The battle intensified, with human and Draken ships weaving through each other in chaotic, high-speed combat, streaks of laser fire illuminating the dark sky. Meanwhile, Thorn remained focused, issuing rapid commands and adjusting tactics as the Draken responded. He felt the weight of every decision, each call an unspoken promise to the soldiers carrying it out. They weren't just striking back. They were reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy. Suddenly, the image of Commander Razan from the Perseus colony fleet flashed onto Thorn's screen. Ambassador, the outer defenses are weakening, but we need cover on the eastern flank. They're rallying there. We won't last if they break through. Thorn quickly relayed the update to Grayson, who deployed a wing of fighters to Razan's location, bolstering their defenses and securing the perimeter. The command center was within range now. One final push would bring the Draken to their knees. Captain Grayson, Thorn said, a fierce gleam in his eyes, initiate Phase 2. Focus all fire on the command center. Let's finish this. The main guns of the heroic charge, glowing with the concentrated power of newly developed plasma projectiles. Across the fleet, ships aligned their weapons, aiming at the Draken's command center. A volley of energy blasts erupted in unison, a brilliant barrage that tore through the planet's surface defenses and smashed into the command center in a blinding explosion. As the smoke cleared, the screen showed the command center reduced to rubble, debris scattering across the landscape. The Draken's resistance faltered, their remaining forces struggling without coordination or orders. One by one, human ships picked off the last Draken defenders, securing the skies and marking the first major victory for humanity's united fleet. Cheers broke out across the command center as Thorn's officers and crew members celebrated. But Thorn's face remained impassive, his eyes still locked on the view screen, where the ruins of the Draken outpost smoldered below. This was only the beginning, and he knew the cost of what lay ahead. Grayson turned to him, a satisfied but wary look in his eyes. One outpost down, Ambassador. Dozens more to go. Thorn nodded slowly. Today, we've shown the Draken that humanity will not be cowed. We've struck the first blow, and it won't be the last. But we'll need every ounce of strength, every ally, and every advantage if we're to hold our ground. The galaxy is watching us now. He opened the communication line, his voice calm but heroic as he addressed the fleet. To all ships and crew, you've done the impossible today. This victory belongs to every one of you, but the war has only begun. Prepare for the next phase. Humanity will claim its place among the stars. As the channel closed, Thorn felt the weight of his words settle over him. This victory, as decisive as it had been, was just a single step in a brutal campaign that would test the limits of every man and woman under his command. The Draken would not take this lightly. They would retaliate, and when they did, they would come with a force unlike anything humanity had faced before. But Thorn knew that they would be ready. He glanced once more at Grayson, and the two shared a look of unspoken understanding. They had struck the first blow, but their fight was far from over. Thorn turned back to the view screen, watching the stars beyond the shattered outpost, his jaw set with unwavering resolve. The galaxy had awakened to humanity's strength, and he intended to make sure it would never forget. Months of relentless battle had changed humanity's fleet from an alliance of separate forces into a single, ruthless machine. Thorn watched from the bridge of the Heroic as the final skirmishes played out over the embattled world of Epsilon 5, a once mighty Draken colony that was now on the verge of collapse. Planet by planet, stronghold by stronghold, humanity had dismantled the Draken Empire, delivering crushing blows at every turn. Captain Grayson stood beside Thorn, his face marked with the shadows of exhaustion. Yet his eyes held the same unbreakable resolve as they had on the day of Earth's attack. "The last pockets of resistance are collapsing, sir," he reported. "Epsilon 5 will fall within the hour." Thorn nodded, but there was no triumph in his expression. He had led humanity to this point, guiding their fury and resolve against a brutal enemy. But with each victory, he'd seen the price of their conquest reflected in the weary, hardened eyes of his officers. The Draken's cruelty had ignited humanity's wrath, but Thorn knew that once unleashed, this fury was not easily tempered. A communication light blinked, signaling an incoming message. Thorn activated the console, and the face of Commander Razan appeared, battered but smiling from his command ship above Epsilon 5. "Ambassador, the Draken are requesting terms of surrender," Razan said. "They're beaten. They know it. They're asking for mercy." The word hung heavily in the air. Mercy. Thorn thought of Earth's shattered cities, the countless lives lost in the initial assault, the scars that each survivor carried. He knew what Grayson and Razan were expecting him to say. He knew what the fleet was waiting for. A final order to eliminate any trace of Draken power, to secure humanity's dominance once and for all. But something held him back. "They showed us none when they struck Earth," Grayson said quietly, his voice cold. "They didn't ask for mercy then. Why should we grant it now?" Thorn turned, meeting Grayson's gaze. He understood the captain's anger. He felt it himself. But something else stirred within him, a small, persistent doubt. If humanity chose the path of utter annihilation, if they wiped out the Draken without hesitation, what would they become? Would they merely be repeating the cycle of vengeance and bloodshed? He took a steadying breath, considering his next words carefully. "If we destroy them entirely, we may win the war, but we risk becoming what we fought against. We didn't come here just to conquer. We came to survive and to secure our place. I want that place to be one we're proud of." Grayson's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "So, what are you proposing, Ambassador?" "Unconditional surrender," Thorn replied, his voice heroic. "They will be disarmed, their territories monitored, and any further threat from them will be extinguished on sight. But we will not eliminate them. We will establish humanity's strength and our capacity for justice, something they lacked." Razan's voice crackled over the comm, his tone skeptical but respectful. "You believe they'll honor those terms?" "They'll have no choice," Thorn replied. "We'll take control of their worlds, strip them of weapons, and establish human-led outposts to oversee them. We won't rule through fear as they did, but through strength tempered with restraint." The decision was made. Thorn issued the terms to the Draken remnants on Epsilon 5, warning them that a single violation of the agreement would be met with swift and total retaliation. Within hours, the Draken leadership formally surrendered, marking the end of a brutal chapter. As the fleet pulled away from Epsilon 5, Thorn walked alone to the quiet corridors of the heroic, his mind weighed down by the choices he had made. Each victory had brought them closer to survival, to security, but at a cost he hadn't fully foreseen. He arrived at the observation deck, where Grayson joined him, silent for a while as they watched Epsilon 5 fade into the darkness of space. "You've changed us, Ambassador," Grayson said finally, his voice quiet. "For the better, I think. But we're not the same people we were when this began." Thorn nodded, understanding the unspoken complexity of Grayson's words. They had protected humanity, yes, but they had also awakened a power within themselves that would demand vigilance. "We've gained strength, Captain," he replied. "But strength without purpose becomes a danger. Now, we need to prove to ourselves and the galaxy that we can wield it wisely." Grayson gave a single nod, his eyes shadowed but thoughtful. "And if the Draken rise against us again," Thorn's gaze was steady, "then we will remind them why they surrendered." As the heroic set course for Earth, Thorn felt the full weight of his decisions settle within him. He had led humanity to victory, had established them as a force to be reckoned with, but he knew that the path forward would require more than strength. It would demand wisdom, patience, and a refusal to let the scars of war harden into bitterness. Ahead of them lay the long process of rebuilding, of redefining humanity's place among the stars. They had won their survival, but the challenge of maintaining it, of remaining true to their values despite their power, had only begun. When they finally reached Earth, the fleet was welcomed as heroes. Cities rebuilt, survivors cheered, and a new chapter for humanity began. Yet Thorn knew that the real legacy of their conquest would be written not in battles won, but in the choices they made thereafter. As he stepped down from the heroic, greeted by faces both familiar and new, Thorn felt the weight of his promise to protect, to lead, and to ensure that humanity's strength would be guided by justice, not by fear. It was a daunting path, but it was one he believed they could walk, if they remembered the price they had paid and the lesson they had learned. They were conquerors now, yes, but also guardians of a fragile peace. And as Thorn looked up at the stars, he knew that humanity had truly begun its journey, not merely as a force to be feared, but as a power willing to protect its place in the galaxy with wisdom and restraint.